going to be going over today is John chapter 12, verse 23 to 24, which says, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. So that verse really stuck out at me, and I really wanted to go in depth on seeds, on things in our life dying and living again. When I looked up the word seed, the definition was that it is a source of development and growth. So literally, when you plant a seed in the ground, you're literally putting the seed in its own grave, right? And that seed has to first die before a harvest can actually come out of that seed. And that's evident in what Jesus did for us. You know, Jesus is essentially God's seed to mankind, right? Jesus died, was crucified, and out of that crucifixion, when Jesus broke through the barrier of death, we became the harvest to God, right? And that's a blessing. When you look around, you're like, we are God's harvest for that sacrifice. You know, it's extremely humbling. But I think also another point in that message is to us that there's a lot of times we have dreams, we have relationships, we have so many different things in our life that appear to be dead physically, but it's not dead spiritually. And we have to recognize that. We have to recognize how God works in our lives. And so I wanted to go to, basically, the whole point of this message is to encourage us. Because in our lives, we can see things physically as dying. But we got to know that God is always working on our behalf. That things that seem to be dead are not dead. So I wanted to go to Romans chapter 4, verse 17 through 19, where it says, as it is written, I have made you a father of many nations. He is our Father in the sight of God, in whom he believed, the God who gives life to the dead and calls into being things that were not. Against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and so became the father of many nations, just as has been said to him. So shall your offspring be. Without weakening in faith, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead, since he was about 100 years old, and that Sarah's womb was also dead. So what really stuck out to me in that verse is in verse 18 it says, against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and so became the father of many nations. So I asked myself, how could he be against hope and in hope at the same time? Right? And in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, it says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So when you look at that, we look at this, what is the substance of the thing? You know, if you look at water, you know, what is the substance of water? It's H2O, right? If you take away hydrogen and oxygen, it's no longer water, right? So literally what water is made of is H2O. What your hope is made of is your faith. So when you look at faith and fear, it's essentially the same thing on opposite ends of the spectrum. But hope is attached to both. You know, when you fear a thing, you're calling the thing into your future that may not ever happen, when you're believing that thing to happen. The same thing with faith. So basically what he's saying is that against hope and fear, but he remained in hope of faith. And he kept his hope strengthened, right? He increased his faith. So that's something that really struck out at me, that you can either have faith or fear, but we have to understand that fear is not of God. Faith is. So you have to encourage your faith. You have to strengthen your faith, right? So the question is, how do you do that? In the face of all odds, how do you increase your faith? Well, we read in the scriptures that faith comes from hearing. And hearing comes from the Word of God, right? So on a day-to-day basis, who do we hear more from? Anybody else? Ourselves, right? We hear our own voice day in and day out. So what you say to yourself determines whether you're going to have faith or you're going to have fear in your heart. So when we look at, and this is actually, it seems like it's going to be a pretty short message because I'm close to the end. But when you look at Ezekiel 37, 1 through 14, I'm going to wrap it up here. This verse is so powerful to me. Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 1 through 14, it says that the hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord, and set me in the middle of the valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. He asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? I said, Sovereign Lord, you alone know. Then he said to me, Prophesy to these bones and say to them, Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath into you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you, and make flesh come upon you, and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I was prophesying, there was a noise and rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked at the tendons, and the flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, Prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, Son of man, and say to it, This is what the Sovereign Lord says. Come, breathe from the four winds, and breathe into these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them. Then came to life and stood up on their feet a vast army. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, Our bones are dried up, and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, This is what the Sovereign Lord says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord. When I open your graves and bring you up from them, I will put my spirit in you, and you will live. And I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. So that is so powerful because God has given you the blueprint on how to strengthen your faith right there. So remember, hope is basically what you're pulling from your future. When you prophesy, you are speaking to your future against what your current circumstances are. So you have to prophesy in the face of death, in the face of relationships that may have deteriorated, in the face of finances that aren't where you want them to be, in the face of your career, in the face of anything that could be going wrong. You have to speak to your future. You have to speak to things that are not as though they are. And God will work in your life. So always remember that no matter what you face, no matter what you see, no matter what you see that appear to be dead, God will resurrect. But we have to, in the spirit, we have to cultivate that seed. Jesus Christ, he says, I am light. Right? I am the light of this world. He said, I am living water. We have to water that seed spiritually. We have to give that seed life. We create the atmosphere that God can cultivate that seed, and we will see miraculous things happen. So, I know I haven't hit the questions, right? So let me hit those. So one, seeds are placed in us by God for us to grow with His Word. Number two, God sometimes requires obedience in seemingly impossible situations. And number three, God allows things to die so they can live. All right. So thank y'all.